Final Fantasy VII Remake is not the game you think you played. And if you finished this game thinking you understood everything, the truth is, you only understood the layer the game allowed you to see. Because there is something there that was never meant to be comfortable. Something that was never meant to please everyone. And the most unsettling part? Square never hid this. We're the ones who chose not to see it. Today, I'm not doing a standard Final Fantasy VII Remake review. I'm not gonna talk about scores, or whether the game looks good, or whether the combat's fun. Today, I'm gonna show you what this game really is. Because Final Fantasy VII Remake isn't just a retelling, it's a creative decision that changes the destiny of the entire franchise. And the more you understand that decision, the more impossible it becomes to see this game the same way again. Stay with me until the end, because this part completely changes how you see this game. To understand why this game provokes such extreme reactions, you have to remember what Final Fantasy VII meant. In 1997, Final Fantasy VII wasn't just a commercial success. It was a video game that showed the world that games could tell mature, complex, emotionally painful stories. For many people, it was the first game that hurt. Aeris' death wasn't just a narrative moment, it was a shock. Claude's trauma wasn't just plot, it was real psychological confusion. And Sephiroth wasn't just a villain, he was presence. And for more than 20 years, the fans asked for a remake for one simple reason. Not to change it, but to relive it. And everything in the marketing campaign reinforced that exact idea. The name was Remake, not reimagining, not reboot. The trailers recreated iconic scenes almost frame by frame. The soundtrack hit at the exact right moments. The message was clear. This is the Final Fantasy VII you love, only better. But words create expectations. And the word remake creates a very specific promise. A promise this game deliberately chooses to break. Before any narrative rupture, before any real sense of unease in the story, the game does something very smart. It wins you over. Final Fantasy VII Remake's combat isn't just good, it's comfortable. It makes you feel at home. At first glance, it seems simple. Real-time action, fast attacks, particles everywhere, but the more you play, the more you realize that's just the surface. Because the game doesn't want you mashing buttons, it wants you to think under pressure. The ATB system isn't there for nostalgia, it's there to constantly remind you that acting without thinking has a cost. You can attack as much as you want, but if you spend ATB the wrong way, the game punishes you, and it punishes you fast. Each character makes that even clearer. Cloud rewards aggression, but punishes you if you lean on it too hard. Tifa looks simple until you realize she's about timing, about rhythm, about knowing exactly when to push forward and when to stop. Barret gives you a sense of safety, but if you rely on him too much, combat becomes slow, heavy, and inefficient. Aerith is the first silent warning that the game isn't as simple as it looks. She demands planning, she demands patience, she demands awareness of the battlefield. And when you make a mistake with her, the game doesn't forgive you. That creates a very strange feeling. You feel like you're mastering the system, but at the same time, you feel like the system is watching you, testing you. And little by little, without noticing, you start trusting Square. You think they know exactly what they're doing. The combat works, it's satisfying, it's modern, it respects the past. And that's exactly why it works as the perfect distraction. While you're busy mastering the system, optimizing builds, enjoying the mechanical pleasure, the game is preparing something bigger. Something that has nothing to do with combat. And by the time you realize that, it's already too late to shut the game down. Visually, Final Fantasy VII really impresses quickly, but not in a loud way. Not through powerful explosions, not through cold technical fidelity. It's atmosphere. Midgard doesn't feel like a setting, it feels like an organism. The streets are too narrow, the buildings are too tall, the sky is always too heavy. Nothing there was designed to make you feel comfortable. And you feel that, even when you're not actively paying attention, because the game uses space as language. You rarely see the sky. And when you do, it feels distant, artificial, almost wrong. And that seeps into your subconscious without warning. But if the visuals build the prison, the sound is what locks the door. The soundtrack doesn't come in to accompany the action, it comes in to prepare you. Often, the music starts before you even know why. It rises without an obvious reason. It creates tension where there's no immediate danger. And that's not an accident. The game is constantly telling you how to feel, even when you think you're in control. Calm moments are never completely calm. There's always a distant noise, a metallic echo, a note held just a little too long, as if something is wrong, but it's not time to tell you yet. And when the game wants you to relax, it relaxes too much. The music softens, the tones turn warm, the characters breathe. It's calculated comfort, because right after that, the game takes it away from you without warning. And the most curious part is that you accept it. You don't question it, you trust it, because everything looks beautiful, everything is well produced, everything feels respectful to the original. But that aesthetic fidelity has a dangerous side effect. It creates emotional safety. And an emotional safety is the best way to lower your guard. While you admire the city, the music, the details, the game is training your emotions, teaching you when to relax, when to worry, when to wait. And that will matter much later, much more than it seems right now. There's a reason Final Fantasy VII Remake spends so much time on its characters. It's not just to modernize dialogue, it's not just to deepen relationships or to please longtime fans. It is to create attachment, but not just any attachment. It's a dangerous one. Cloud, for example, has never felt more human and never felt more unstable. He's not just cold or distant, he hesitates, he freezes, he reacts too late to things that shouldn't affect him that way. Sometimes Cloud feels present, other times he feels like he's just occupying space, as if he's listening to something you can't hear. And the game never explains this, it lets you feel it. You notice it in the silences, in the mistimed looks, in the answers that arrive just a little bit too late. That creates discomfort, because you trust them, but not completely. Tifa reinforces that discomfort in an even subtler way. She knows something is wrong with Cloud, and you know she knows, but she doesn't confront him, she avoids it, she changes the subject. Tifa isn't emotional support, she's containment. She holds back questions she doesn't want the answers to. And every time she does that, the game plants a doubt in your mind. What happens when she stops holding back? Barrett seems simpler at first glance. Anger, ideology, explosions. But the more the time you spend with them, the more you realize that this isn't strength. It's desperation. Barrett speaks loudly because he can't afford silence. He needs to believe all of this means something, because if it doesn't, then the blame falls entirely on him. And the game lets that slip out in very small moments, not in speeches but in pauses, in lines that start firm and then broken. But nothing in the game is as carefully constructed as Aerith. Aerith doesn't behave like someone experiencing these events for the very first time. She reacts like someone who has already lost. She anticipates goodbyes, avoids promises, smiles in moments where she shouldn't be smiling. And when you notice that, something starts to feel deeply wrong. Because it doesn't feel like innocence, it feels like acceptance. Aerith knows when not to insist, knows when to change the subject, she knows when to stay silent, and the game never tells you why, it just lets you put the pieces together. And the more attached you become to these characters, the more the game puts you in an uncomfortable situation. Because you start to realize something essential. They feel more alive than ever, closer, more human, more fragile. And that isn't kindness, it's preparation. The game wants you to care, it wants you to connect, it wants you to lower your guard. Because when something changes, it won't change in some distant world, it will change in them. And when that happens, you won't be ready. For a large portion of Final Fantasy VII Remake, the game goes out of its way to feel safe. Not safe in the sense of predictable, safe in the sense of trustworthy. It starts exactly where you expect it to. The same images, the same city, the same promise. Midgar, the explosion, the group, land. Everything is in the right place, and that is not a coincidence. The game wants you to recognize every step. It wants you to think, I know where this is going. And when you recognize the path, you relax. You accept small changes. You accept extra dialogue. You even accept extended scenes because everything feels respectful. The game doesn't rush, it breathes. It gives you time to reconnect with characters, to listen to side conversations, to walk through the city, and that creates a very dangerous feeling, narrative comfort. You feel like you're in experienced hands, like nothing important is going to derail. But if you pay attention, something starts to feel off. Small moments that don't stand out right away. Reactions that don't quite match the situation. Silences that last just a little too long. Nothing explicit, nothing loud. Just enough to slip by the first time, but strong enough to bother you when you remember it later. The game never says something is wrong. It does something more effective. Far more effective. It lets you feel it. You feel that certain scenes last longer than they should. That some characters react too quickly or too slowly. As if time itself were slightly out of sync, and still you trust it because everything is well produced, everything feels made with care, everything respects what you remember, and that's the trap. The game builds a relationship of trust before introducing any real rupture. It teaches you that changes can exist as long as they're small, as long as they don't touch the heart of the story. And once you accept that, once you start thinking, okay, this is still the Final Fantasy VII I know, the game has already gotten what it wanted. You've lowered your guard. You're no longer analyzing, you're living it. And it's exactly at that same point that the story allows itself clear interferences. Still subtle, still easy to ignore, but now they're no longer accidents. They're warnings. Warnings that the path you think you know may not lead where you expect. And when the game finally makes this explicit, you're already too emotionally invested to walk away. The whispers don't enter the story as a revelation, they enter as noise. At first, you don't understand what you're seeing. Strange shapes almost out of focus, they appear too quickly to analyze. They disappear before they make sense. And the game goes out of its way to treat them as something minor. No one stops to explain, no one reacts dramatically. It's as if the world itself is saying, move on, it's nothing. And you do, but they come back. Always at the wrong moments, always when something should happen and doesn't, or when something shouldn't happen and does. Little by little, a pattern begins to form. The whispers don't appear randomly. They aren't there to create cheap mystery. They appear to correct decisions, to correct deviations, to correct events that stray from what you remember. And when you realize this, the discomfort shifts. It stops being, what are those things, and becomes, why are they stopping this? The whispers don't protect people, they protect events. They don't care about individual choices, they care about the outcomes. Whenever something threatens to leave the familiar track, they intervene, they push characters, they block paths, they force situations. And the game never says this out loud, it lets you put the pieces together on your own. And when you do, the impact is different, because you realize that the game isn't just telling a story, it's defending a very specific version of it. A version you already know, a version you expect, and that changes everything. Because at this moment, the whispers stop being an entity within the game world. They start representing something external. They represent the force that prevents change, the force that demands fidelity, the force that says, this already happened this way, do not touch it. They represent the weight of the past. And once you understand that, the game's conflict changes completely. It's no longer Cloud versus Sephiroth. It's no longer Avalanche versus Shinra. It's the story trying to break free, and something trying to keep it locked in place. And here's the most unsettling detail. The whispers react to you. They appear when you expect something different, when you believe a scene is about to change, when your expectations clash with the script. It's as if the game is watching what you believe should happen. And every time that belief threatens to become reality, the whispers show up to stop it. At that point, something becomes clear. Even though the game never says it outright, the whispers don't exist for the characters. They exist for you. They are a manifestation of collective memory, of nostalgia, of resistance to change. They are the past, fighting to remain the past. And when the game finally puts you in direct confrontation with them, it's not just some action set piece. It's a statement that from that point on, the story no longer owes you anything. And when the whispers begin to fall, one question hangs in the air. If destiny can be defeated, what else can change? And that's the moment the game crosses the point of no return. The ending of Final Fantasy VII doesn't happen suddenly, it announces itself. Something shifts in the rhythm, in the music, in the characters' eyes. There's a clear sense that the game is no longer interested in comfort. Everything that once felt safe starts to unravel. The rules you thought you understood stop working, and the game doesn't try to soften that. It pushes. Destiny stops being an abstract idea and becomes a concrete enemy, something that can be fought, something that can be defeated. And when that happens, the sword crosses a line it can't come back from. Because defeating Destiny isn't just a narrative event, it's a creative decision. The game is saying plainly, what came before no longer binds us. And that is when the mask finally falls. Zack appears alive, not as an Easter egg, not as a vague suggestion, but as a statement. And that breaks something fundamental. Because Zack being alive isn't just a small change, it's a direct denial of the past. It's the game looking at you and saying, you can't trust memory anymore. And then comes Sephiroth. But not the Sephiroth you know. He doesn't just want to destroy. He doesn't just want to win. He wants something far more dangerous. He wants to rewrite. Rewrite choices, rewrite losses, rewrite consequences. And when he reaches out to Cloud, it's not a narrative invitation. It's a metatextual one. It's the game asking, indirectly, are you willing to let this story become something else? At that point, Final Fantasy VII Remake stops pretending to be a remake. It reveals itself for what it always was, a continuation, a commentary on itself, an attempt to escape its own shadow. The whispers fall. The symbol of resistance to the past disappears, and with that, the game guarantees nothing. It doesn't promise safety, it doesn't promise fidelity, it doesn't promise familiar emotions. It promises only one thing: uncertainty. And that is what divides fans the most. Because for some, that's boldness, it's creative courage, it's liberation. For others, it's betrayal. It's breaking an emotional pact. It's touching something that should never have been touched. And the game knows this. It doesn't try to convince you. It doesn't ask for your approval. It simply ends, leaving one question open. If Destiny can be defeated, if the past no longer dictates the future, what can still be considered sacred? And when the screen fades to black, the discomfort remains. Not because the game is over, but because it never truly ended. It only warned you. From here on out, nothing is going to happen the way you expect. If you like this kind of analysis that goes beyond the obvious, subscribe because the next video is going to go even deeper. So this was Belmont speaking to you. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, all those things. It really means the world to me, and I'll see you next time. Later.